Hello and welcome to part 2 of our 5-part series based on 5 conversations, our Amazon best-selling book and flagship program here at the Oxford Group. My name's Andy Dent. I'm one of the directors here at the Oxford Group, and I've got the pleasure of working with a great team of people to serve up innovative solutions and added value to our clients. And I'm probably one of 5 Conversations' biggest fans, it's fair to say, both from the impact it's had on my own leadership, but also the impact that I've seen it have on many clients that we've worked with and I've delivered to all over the world. So I'm also joined by my colleague, Maggie Matthews. So over to you, Maggie.
Hi, thank you very much, Andy. Good day to everybody who's here. Lovely to have you on the webinar with us today. So I'm Maggie Matthews. I'm an Associate Director with the Oxford Group. I've worked here for 17 years, which always scares me every time I say that. And I'm passionate about 5 Conversations too. Andy keeps saying that he's the biggest fan, but I'm not quite sure if that is the case. I also think 5 Conversations is a really useful, practical set of tools for managers and in fact all of us to use at work. I want to tell you a little bit about the Oxford Group before we kick off talking about Conversation 2. Many of you will already know the Oxford Group is a global provider of leadership and management development and executive coaching, and we have about 200 consultants and coaches around the world delivering in about 50 languages, and 5 Conversations is one of the many programs that we run with our clients. So delighted to be here today and delighted to talk to you about Conversation 2.
Thanks, Maggie. So kicking us off with a question, Conversation 2 is all about mutual expectation. So why is it so important that we can agree expectations, mutual expectations with our colleagues?
Fine. So Andy, yeah, I guess, well, for me, look, this whole Conversation 2 for me is pretty straightforward and simply it's about 2 people being clear about what they expect of each other and what motivates them. And that then allows those 2 people to deliver together and to support each other with whatever it is that they're trying to deliver. In some contexts, that can be the manager and direct report, but it can also be across stakeholder groups. Its power is in that clarity. Its power is in understanding not just what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we expect of each other as a result of that.
Yeah. And I think just to build on that, Maggie, I think one of the things that elevates this conversation from just a transactional goal setting exercise is the purpose-driven nature of the conversation. When I say purpose-driven, actually it's about the why, understanding why things matter. So why am I asking someone to do something as a manager or leader? How does that connect to my personal purpose, the mission I'm on at the moment, or the organization? So it's about moving beyond the what and maybe the how. You know, I need you to do X by Y, and maybe the how you could do it like this. To actually getting to the root of, well, why does that matter to me? And the thing I love about this conversation is it's a 2-way conversation. So it's about extending beyond just what you're asking someone to do, but actually it's about, well, what's important to them at this specific time and how can I help? That's what really elevates it for me.
And I guess for me, as I'm hearing you speaking, it's more than the typical objective setting conversation. In fact, it's probably a sister or a brother to that. It's in tandem. We do this conversation too alongside the typical performance management cycle, and this sits around it, and I think that's important. And I would always encourage people to have this conversation outside of that clear objective setting process.
No, I completely agree. I mean, you could do it within the objective setting, but I think the power of it is actually getting into the depth of what's really important to me over the next period of time. And that could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be 12 months, depending on the period of time that you're focused upon. It's about getting someone to understand what's really important to you and you understanding what's really important to them. So you can drive towards this clarity of expectation at a higher purpose, but for mutual success as well. There's a real mutuality, if that's even a word, to this one from my perspective.
Yeah, and when we get in a moment, Andy, you'll share a little bit more about some of the theory behind it and some of the tools behind it. But for me, it's this. What's really important to have an effective mutual expectation conversation. You yourself need to know your own why. So, and that's a crucial foundation. So, why do you do what you do? What drives you in your role and in terms of what's expected of you in your everyday? So, that's a crucial piece of thinking that is important for all of us to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's have a look at what powers conversation 2. So conversation 2, agreeing mutual expectation. This conversation is really about two people who are mutually dependent on one another for achieving success, to agree the things that are important and how you're going to help one another to achieve those things together. One of the models that supports this particular conversation is one that's quite well known. So it's Simon Sinek's Golden Circle from The Power of Why. And really the emphasis of this model moves away from just the transactional, the what needs to be achieved and the how it needs to be achieved. I know as a manager, in my previous pre-5 conversation days, I like to think that, I would extend beyond the what. So I'd ask someone, this is what we need to achieve by this period of time. Let's get into a good coaching conversation about how that can be achieved. So what is the process that you're going to go through to get to the output? But very often I didn't get as deep as going to the why. And that's the thing that really makes the difference in this conversation, because that is the thing that really gets people on board, is understanding why it's important to you, its purpose, and really connecting with that as a human being. The other really important thing is it's to understand other people's why, as we've mentioned a couple of times already. So let me run you through the structure, because I think this will give some clarity to the conversation. So firstly, someone's got to instigate the conversation, and that would depend on, in the context, it may be a leader, it may be a manager, or it may be on a colleague-to-colleague basis. But the idea is that you're going to reveal something that you're trying to achieve, sharing why it matters, and then having some kind of exchange about how that person can support you. Now, you may already have some ideas in your mind about the things that person could do to support you. You may also be curious about what they think they could do to support you as well, because there might be some creativity in them thinking about other ways that they can help you beyond what you've already got in your mind. And then what we do is we switch to the other side and we say, well, look, I've shared what I'm trying to achieve, why that matters to me. We've looked at how you can help me to achieve that. But what are you trying to achieve in the next 3 months, or however long the period of time that you're focused on? What is going on for you that's really important in your work that you really, really want to make sure that you nail? And then we get into that piece about, well, why does that matter to you? And that's a really interesting dynamic, because a lot of time people, Maggie and I spoke about this in our preparation for today. A lot of people don't go there and really think about why these things matter to us. We just do what we do at work because we want to be productive and we want to do a good job. But actually, there's a lot more that's sat behind that, and revealing that can be really powerful. But that isn't something that naturally flows out of people when you ask that question. So we want to be realistic here, in the fact that sometimes that takes a little bit of coaxing or some reflection, even for you to start the conversation, give someone some space to go away and think about it. And then the last part of the conversation is about how once you've understood what they're trying to achieve, why it matters to them, how can I help you to achieve that? As someone that is important in your world at work, what are the things that I can do to help you to achieve what's really important to you? And lastly, there's the piece around just bringing it all together. So a nice open coaching coaching question. So what are the expectations we can agree of one another to get to the point that we can help each other on these two things? And that really just rounds off the conversation with some real clarity around what needs to be achieved. And for me, that creates this connected human contract, which is far more powerful than setting a SMART objective. Now, there is space and time for SMART objectives, of course, but this just does elevate it to another level. And generally, we've seen that there is more success and more outcome off the back of this type of conversation because of the depth that it gets to. So we are now going to do a live conversation 2. We did this on the first session and it seemed to go okay. We quite enjoyed it, didn't we, Maggie? So we thought we'd be brave and go again.
We did.
And you led us in on the last one, so I'm going to lead us in on this one. You can see the flow there. We're just going to quickly go through this. So this will be relatively rapid fire. And if we had more time, we probably would get into a bit more depth. But here goes nothing. So Maggie, as you know, one of my focuses moving into 2023 is to really drive the quality of our thought leadership, the content that we're putting out there to add value to our clients, and just to help leaders and managers to create the conditions for either their success or the people's success. I think we've got lots of knowledge and experience and insight in the Oxford Group, and it's probably in some ways a best kept secret, and we're really keen to get that out there a lot more. So we want to be more consistent, we want to be more regular in our thought leadership, and we want to shout about it a bit more loudly and proudly. So that really matters to me because I think there's some great stuff that we can do, and we can really, really help managers and leaders to overcome some of the problems that they face. I remember my first management role, I was literally 18 and maybe a couple of months. I got chucked the keys pretty much to a leisure centre and pretty much got told to get on with it. And I made a lot of early mistakes along the way, having not really had any formal management or leadership training, and probably put some of the people around me in a bit of pain on that journey, and things probably could have been a bit better. So for me, putting out great quality content hopefully can reach managers and leaders to help them to not have to go through some of that pain. So it's a bit of a grandiose goal, but certainly something that's important to me. So in terms of that getting out more regular and consistent thought leadership, I know that you're focused on that from a management perspective. So I'd be really keen to get you on board and just to think about what else we could do in that space. So have you got any thoughts on how you could go about helping me with that?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So I guess, first of all, if we are in the middle of having this conversation, there's lots I can do. So there's lots of content I can contribute. There's a lot of experience that I have from working with clients and from being in front of real live managers on a day-to-day basis, which is where I find myself on a regular basis. So I think guiding and supporting and providing content and the quality content that you want is definitely something I can support you with. Okay.
And have you got any ideas on, topics or things or themes that you think are important?
So gosh, probably lots. So when I'm talking to managers and when I'm working with managers and talking to clients, there are several topics that are cropping up regularly these days. So hybrid working is important. Inclusivity is important. So how do we help managers to navigate what they see as complexity in that whole inclusivity space, and themes around sustainability, diversity, recruitment, building a team that's consistent. So there's lots and lots of themes that I think we could work on together to build what it is that you're trying to do.
Okay, and have you got any thoughts in terms of like formats or content that you would feel comfortable or that would suit those types of medium?
So Andy, you know me, and I'm very practical, and so for me, events like this, because I think this is really accessible. Sessions like this are key. Working with our clients to help them help us get those themes right are really important as well. Okay. So any event that we can connect with our clients, I think would also be key to building some of that content, and having our clients at the heart of some of that content is also important from my perspective.
Yeah. No, great stuff. Thanks, Maggie. Some good stuff to mull over, and we'll definitely connect a bit more on this offline. So that's obviously what I'm trying to achieve, but keen to understand what's important to you over the next few months as we kind of move into the new year.
Yeah, I mean, not dissimilar to you, Andy. I'm trying to achieve the same thing, really, to connect, to understand what our clients need, and to deliver that for them. So to work in partnership and in some cases co-create that together. And I guess it matters to me because I remember when I started at the Oxford Group first, and Nigel, who's the founder of the Oxford Group and the co-author of the 5 Conversations book, his mantra was always, nobody comes to work to do a bad job. And I've always remembered that, and I think sometimes we can lose sight of that, and the work that we do is to help managers, leaders, individuals in an organization to do good work, and sometimes it's the skill, it's the confidence to have these kinds of conversations, because I know if people in organizations can be confident in having conversation 1 that we talked about last week, which is about mutual trust, conversation 2, which is around this expectation piece, it releases a lot of the pressure and a lot of the tension around being a manager or being a team member. So it matters to me for that reason to really connect practically on a day-to-day basis. So that's important to me, and I think we're speaking from the same space. For me, I want it to be as practical as it can be, and that matters to me, because for me, the more practical it is, the more connected it feels, and the easier it is to access. And easy accessibility is important.
So how can I help with that piece, Maggie? What's your thoughts? What can I do?
So I guess sometimes in the planning process, sometimes we can plan too far ahead, and stuff happens, and everything is sort of pinned down. We've got a 3-month plan and it's all pinned down, and I've got no opportunity to contribute to that. So if there are little windows where the plan can be maybe changed, or we can do things a little bit differently, or I get involved in the plan, which I know can sometimes be difficult because I don't always make myself accessible. But so there's something about having the plan, it's in place, but there's some flexibility around it, and finding a way to contribute to that would be fantastic. So, and I'd as usual, I'll happily do that, and work with you on that.
Cool. Okay. So in terms of what we can agree to support each other with those 2 goals that we're driving towards, what do you think we could agree on? What's your thoughts?
I think we probably, Andy, need to connect more regularly. So when we're putting the thought leadership and the plan together about what we're doing and what we're presenting to our to clients and what we're sharing with the world, is for me to be involved in that as early as I can be. And I need to commit to making myself available to you as well, because I know there are times when I'm not available. So to make that really important, an important part of the process. And then I can certainly commit to that in helping us to build that.
So why don't we get a planning session booked in? And within that, what we can do is create some windows that we will serve up content, and we can keep it relatively open. So you've got some flex in terms of what you're going to put forward. Because if it's driven by you, if you need some agility, then in terms of switching and changing topics, then that's there. As long as we've agreed broadly what the format is and some of the timelines, we can leave that open. How does that sound to you?
It sounds like a plan, and a flexible plan.
That's what we like. Good stuff. Okay. So that rounds off our conversation 2. So relatively quick fire, some real stuff. I was actually writing down notes of stuff. This is a real conversation. We will make those commitments happen, because they are things that will help both of us. So so a real conversation that will have some action there. And probably if we had more time, Maggie, we could have got into the depth of it then, couldn't we? I suspect as well.
Absolutely. And I was, it was such a real conversation. I was kind of thinking of ideas off the top of my head. So when we do have our planning meeting, I'll be more planful in coming up with ideas.
To build on. Fantastic. Okay. So those types of conversations, you've just seen it live. It doesn't take all that long to get into it. Of course, we know what's coming, the structure there. So we're going to have a little bit of an advantage. But, 5-10 minutes or so, you can get a really good conversation going. So what gets in the way of these conversations and doing them well? So here's just some of the things that we notice that get in the way. And I know, Maggie, I don't know if you want to fire first and share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the big one for me when I first was thinking about conversation too, the purpose of it is to understand somebody's why and to share your why. So so that then you can understand each other better, and you can clarify what you expect of each other, and off you go and deliver together. Sometimes when I've spoken to people about this, they've said, well, it can feel manipulative. So it can feel like we are trying to push our why on somebody else, or we're trying to, well, let's find out and see what makes them tick, because then we can figure out when they'll say yes, and we can put lots of pressure on them because we're pushing their buttons that will make them work. And it genuinely can't be about that. So the mindset around this conversation has to be about understanding each other's mutual why, and using that to deliver together, not using that to turn the screws on somebody else. So that's an important mindset for me. And that it can feel manipulative, could stop people having it. But that's up to us, because that's our mindset and how we deal with it.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree. And I think there's something in being really genuine going into it and genuinely wanting to engage with someone else's why. And if they feel that, and if they see the action off the back of that, which is really important as well, then they're not going to see it as a manipulative conversation moving forward. They're going to see it as an opportunity, and that actually there's some bonus points in the bank for having delivered on that and really helped someone in something that's really important to them at work. One of my favorite sayings, and many people are probably sick of me saying it, but the whole time thing. And I always go back to Stephen Covey's quote, fast is slow with people. Taking 10 minutes to connect on this type of level is going to save you hours and hours further down the track. So just a little bit more time can really help us go a lot further in terms of output further down the track.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the other one for me about why people are not having this, and I alluded it to earlier, is because we're not clear ourselves about our own why. So, and it's taking some time out. In the book, there's a couple of exercises in there that an individual can do to articulate. That's funny, I couldn't articulate the word articulate, but they can articulate their own why. And so it's thinking about what part of your job do you feel in the flow and at your best? So if you can think about the times in your role when you're feeling at your best, that can help you think about the why. Thinking about your legacy, what is it that you want people to be saying about you and what you do? All of examining some of that can help you get your own why clear. And it doesn't have to be 100% clear. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be fancy. It can just be, and for example, a lot of the time for me, my why is always about in service of others, delivering good stuff and doing it in a way that makes sense to other people. So it can be, it doesn't have to be fancy or shiny.
No, absolutely. And it could be as simple as, and I've had periods in my life where what's really important to me over the next 3 months is to have a better work-life balance, actually. And how can my manager help me with that? Well, stop giving me loads of work, or respect my boundaries. So there's something in that as well. We never know what's going to quite come out. And that maybe would matter at the time because I was a new father.
Yeah.
So there's some really simple stuff that can come out and can be very revealing of where people are as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, and another one is about this is all somebody's asked a question actually, but this is all around. It's going to take ages to learn these conversations. It's going to take a long time to get good at it. But actually, even in the training room, and if sometimes we suggest we do this with real teams, so we roll out 5 conversations with real teams, because even in the training room, you're starting to build knowledge and insight of your colleagues and what drives them, and you have the early parts of these conversations, so it doesn't have to take long. This can be quite a simple process, and that can sometimes feel like a blocker for people, but again, it's just starting it, doing it, and it can happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's we put at the bottom there, what about SMART objectives, or our formal kind of goal setting process we've got to go through in our organizations. We're not advocating that this necessarily replaces those, because there is a time for all of those types of conversation, but this conversation I would do alongside that, or in addition to, because it will take you to a deeper level. And this isn't a conversation you're probably going to have weekly necessarily. This might be a conversation you have on a quarterly basis, or maybe a few times a year, just to get to that really important thing. It's not about the micro things that go on a day-to-day basis, although you could use it in that way if you wanted. It's more about the things that are really most important over a given period of time, and us committing to each other to help each other to achieve those things.
Yeah, and in fact, I would say that doing conversation 1 and conversation 2 really well makes SMART objectives much easier, because you're not in this battle where you're thinking, what's my manager going to set me this time, or which strategic objectives are going to end up on my plate. You've already got a starting point, and you've already got a trust and a relationship, and you know that you know what each other are trying to achieve. So for me, I think it complements SMART objectives really well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Maggie. Okay, so we're almost out of time, so we just wanted to say a big thank you for your attention. If you've liked the content, then please follow us on LinkedIn. You'll get all the updates of all the events that we run. There should be a link in chat now to book on to the next session if you haven't already done so. If you're watching this on YouTube, you better pick up the next recording really quickly as well. And if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, just dive onto our website and scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see sign up to our newsletter in the bottom right hand corner, and that will give you access to all of our events moving forward. So a big thank you. Good luck with the conversations.
And a big thank you for, sorry, Andy, a big thank you.
You.
It's a thank you from Andy, and it's a big thank you from me as well. So have a good rest of day, whatever that looks like for you.
Take care, everyone.